Part of faith in Allah is that He is near to His creation. Included in all of that is faith in His nearness and answering supplications, as all this is mentioned in His saying, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. If my servants ask you about me, then verily I am near. And His saying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, verily he whom you call upon is closer to you than the neck of your riding animal. And what is mentioned in the book and the sunnah of His nearness and His omnipresence do not negate what we mentioned of His highness and transcendence. For He, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not like anything else in all of His qualities.
No, so the Mu'allif, he's trying to focus on the point that, yes, even though these ayats, so he's trying to, so some people, they might be confused, or the people of Bid'ah, they might say, oh, if you're going to say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's above His throne, then what are you going to do with these ayat that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He's close to his abd, he's qareeb. And then, like we mentioned before, the context of these ayat, context of this qurb, and we also mentioned the example of the moon. Now,
faith in the Qur'an as the revealed, uncreated speech of Allah. Part of faith in Allah and His books is faith that the Qur'an is the word of Allah, revealed and uncreated. It originated from Him, and to Him it will return, and that Allah speaking it is reality, and that this Qur'an, which was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the word of Allah in reality, not the speech of anyone else. It is not permissible to claim it is an allegory or a metaphor of the word of Allah, or an expression of it. Rather, if people read it or write it in the scriptural copy, al-Mushaf, that does not exclude it from being the word of Allah, the Exalted, in reality. For speech is only attributed in reality to whoever said it first, and not to the one who later announced it or declared it.
no.
It is the speech of Allah, its letters and its meaning. The speech of Allah is not letters without meaning, nor meaning without letters.
No. So we discussed this before also, but just to recap it, we believe, Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we believe that the Qur'an is kalamullah, غير مخلوق, منه بدأ وإليه يعود. So the Qur'an is the word of Allah, kalamullah, harfan wa sultan. The letters and speech and the voice was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He spoke them, and then minhu bada, it started from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said it to Jibreel, He recited it to Jibreel alayhi salam, He took it and He recited it to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then we have the Qur'an. That's the chain. And then that's minhu bada wa ilayhi ya'ud. Afwan, we forgot to mention غير مخلوق, that is uncreated, because it is the speech of Allah, and the speech is a sifa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks whenever He wishes, however He wishes, at any time. So kalam Allah غير مخلوق منه بدأ, it started from Him, and ilayhi ya'ud, and ilayhi ya'ud means, and then one day it's going to be marfu'a min as-sudur was-sutur. It's going to be lifted. The Quran is going to be lifted from the sudur, from the chest of mankind, meaning their memorization, and it's also going to be lifted from the sutur, which means the lines or the papers, meaning the masahif. So that's basically a summary of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, as some of the other groups, they might say, no, this is not the speech of Allah, rather this is hikayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like an expression or metaphor, or or they say a lot of different stuff, and we mentioned this before, that and that they because they try to avoid saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks, and because if he speaks based on their logic, he subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has a voice cord, he has a voice, he has a throat, a tongue, all these things. So they try to avoid that and say, no, this is kalam nafsi, internal speech. And that's also doing tashbih, because you're doing tashbih to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that he is as a mute person. So we take what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about himself, and we say that about him subhanahu wa ta'ala, what the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his speech, حتى يسمع كلام الله, and many verses in the Qur'an that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explicitly mentions that he speaks, and that Qur'an of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his speech. So it's wallahi, and if anyone reads this, like as Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentioned before, whoever reads the Qur'an tadabburan, with tadabbur and ikhlas, seeking out the truth, then he will be guided, bi'idhnillah. But if anyone has other intentions or is not that sincere, then he'll find out what he wants to find out from the misguidance, and he'll use any verse as evidence, and reject the clear cut evidence. No. And also we believe that it's the words and the letters and the meaning is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No.
Jazakallah khairan. For the new viewers joining us who haven't been able to join us in the past, the Sheikh has used a few terminologies, which basically boils down to some terminologies which we discussed earlier, of giving description of the creation to Allah, which would be tashbih. And a lot of the people who attribute that or have a problem with the Qur'an being the kalam Allah, they do this mistake. They attribute our voice box and our system of our vocal system to imagining that with Allah, which is incorrect. As the general principle, as a reminder for the new viewers, is that we affirm the sifat of Allah in the Quran and Sunnah in the way which befits His Majesty, without going into the howness, without going into detail, which means we don't do tashbih, meaning we don't give it likeness with the creation or describe it like the creation, or nor do we reject it. And this is something which you can maybe review from our past lectures.
Yeah.
Faith that the believers will see their Lord on the day of resurrection. Included also is that we mentioned a faith in Him, His books, His angels, and His messengers. Is faith that the believers will see Him on the day of resurrection with the vision of their eyes, just as they see the sun on a clear day without clouds, just as they see the full moon at night. They will have no difficulty in seeing Him. They will see Him, glory be to Him, while in the courts of the resurrection, and they will see Him after they have entered paradise, as Allah the Exalted wills.
نعم. and there's different aqwal, we just mentioned them, about who's going to see Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah. There's 3 different aqwal, and you can remember it by 3, 2, 1. So the first qawl is that all 3 are going to see, all 3 groups of people are going to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the mu'minun, and the kuffar, and the munafiqeen. So all these 3 are going to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's different qawl. A second opinion is that only the mu'min and the munafiq is going to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the third qawl, which is number 1, one group only is going to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's just the believers. And when we say the munafiqeen and the kuffar, they're gonna see see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're not gonna see Him with the sight of pleasure. Rather, it's not going to be a pleasure for them. Rather, it's going to be more punishment for them, because they're going to know that khalas, this is the day that we messed up, and this is the one who we've been disobeying. So it's not as if they're going to see him for pleasure, but rather the mu'min, the believer, he's obviously, when he sees Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's going to see him and he's going to gain pleasure out of that. And as for which opinion is the most correct one, Allah alam, but Allah alam, but I would say maybe the second opinion, where the munafiq and the believer is going to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.